I'll tell you a story about peyote. Yeah, I held off on this story for a long time because one day I'm going to have grandkids and they're going to be older and they're going to see it and they're going to be like, what? But, I mean, that's life. So I would say, let me guess the year. I'd say the year, my guess would be, say 1985. 85, Chula Vista, California, a suburb, San Diego. I'm hanging out in the park. And some guys started disappearing. And next thing you know, I was by myself and I started to leave. And then I bumped into a guy that I occasionally see, not, in my inner circle. And he's like, hey, Greg, you want some peyote? And I'm like, what? What is that? He said, oh, it's like an Indian medicine that they take and they hallucinate. I go, really? I said, yeah, I've always been curious about that because you hear stories growing up, Southwest California, you hear a lot of stories. So I said, yeah, give me some. He goes, I boiled it in beer. I'm like, what is it? Anyhow, it's like a cactus and you mash it up and you boil it or mix it with water. But he goes, oh, I boiled it with beer. And so I said, okay, hook me up. And he gives me this little cup. Well, he gives me a cup, but it's just got a little bit in it, like 2 ounces. I said, oh, no, give me more than that. He goes, oh, no, you don't want more than this. I said, okay. So I drank a little bit. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna hang out in the park for a little bit and see what happens, right? Because I had done LSD a couple of times, and that's kind of what this is. I think the technical term for the hallucinative part of peyote is mescaline, and this is a natural plant. LSD is like, I don't know what it is, chemicals, And I had a buddy of mine, Troy Miller. He won't mind me talking about this. He lives in Vegas now. Troy was a surfer guy, but he was also he liked to hallucinate. And you would go to his house, and he would have like a fishnet hanging on his ceiling with a bunch of like weird stuff hanging. And I remember like, bro, where'd you get the net, man? I mean, you go, this house smelled like the ocean. He goes, oh yeah, I went down to the Pacific Ocean, and there's just some fishery people down there, and he just asked for a ripped up, torn old piece of netting that they weren't going to use anymore. So they just gave him a bunch of netting, and he had like Oingo Boingo albums, all kinds of weird stuff hanging. And when you walk in and you look at it, you're just like, none of this makes any sense. He goes, oh, but if you take a dose, it makes perfect sense. I'm like, okay, Troy. So he had this stuff in the net just for when he was hallucinating, he can have something to trip out on. And so I had, with him, experienced this hallucinating a couple of times. That wasn't a really big thing for me. So, but I do know that when you do this type of narcotic, that a lot of it, this particular type, depends on the vibe. Who you're around. If you're around mature people, or if you're around people that you think are like, one time, oh gosh, I'm just gonna rip off the Band-Aid. I was on mushrooms, and honestly, this is honest to goodness truth, less than 5 times in my life, maybe 3 times I took mushrooms. I just wasn't into that stuff. And we went out into the mountains east of San Diego. And as I was starting to get into this, the trip was just starting to take effect. I realized that the guy that was driving was evil. I mean, I never, he wasn't one of my friends. He was a friend of a friend. He was the guy driving this van, of course he was driving a clown van, and it was guys and girls were all mixed together. And I just got this bad vibe from the guy, which I never had a good vibe from him anyhow. He's a total horn dog, so I didn't like the way he talked to women. So that whole trip was a bad trip. That was a bad trip. Like, I remember we were out in the woods and I was touching plants. I'd just walk by a bush and rub against the bush, and all of a sudden, when it would touch my skin, I felt like the plant was alive and connecting. Its energy was connecting with me. It was just the most bizarre feeling ever. And so I was afraid of the plants. I was afraid to touch anything. I was afraid of this guy. It was just a bad trip. And so Native Americans, Mexicans, Indians in the southwest part of America would take peyote, but they had the benefit of being around a lot of very experienced, older people. And it's not like they would just say, hey man, let's trip out, man. No, whatever you wanted to focus on, and if you pre-focused on that, I hope I'm getting the gist of it. I don't want to offend, these guys if they ever, one of them would ever watch this video, but that's what's going to be enhanced once you take this medicine. Like the Americans will call it a category 1 substance, something like that. But Indians call it medicine. Indians and Mexicans. So let's say you want to focus on being a better human being, and you microdose this type of peyote, and whatever your emotion, it's just really going to enhance it, and you're going to feel in tune with nature. That's the best way I can describe it. So, but I wasn't surrounded by that type of institutional, generational experience. I was on an island on my own. I just remember I was by myself in the park, and everybody was gone. And all of a sudden, it started to kick in, and I started to hallucinate. And I wasn't scared. I was cautious. And I said, I have to go home right now. I'm going home right now because this is not going to end well if I stay here and this trip continues to enhance and magnify. Then I'm really going to be stuck on this island. I need to get home to my sanctuary because I've never, ever experienced anything so intense in my life. So I got on my bike, and I remember, I'd say it was probably a 2-mile ride. It was a tanker. We used to call them tankers. Mountain bikes, we used to call them tankers back then. I felt like Cat in the Hat. Like the bike was unnatural. Like one pedal was small and the other was big, and the wheels were all different sizes. And I'm riding this bike through Chula Vista like, doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. And I'm like, oh, I really gotta get home. So I made it to the apartment where we rented. I think it was over by Broadway. And luckily, one of my roommates was pretty experienced in this. I mean, he was into stuff that I wasn't into. And so what I was seeing were sea urchins. Yeah, they were everywhere. And don't ask me why, but when I got home, I was barefoot. I remember being barefoot, and these sea urchins were everywhere on the ground. And I was stepping on them, and it was oozing between my toes. And I'm explaining to my roommate, like, bro, they're right there. Right there. And he's like, yeah, Greg, yeah, you're just seeing things. I go, no, I'm not. I am seeing different dimensions. These are vividly real to me. And dude, they're all over the wall. They're everywhere. They were everywhere. It was unbelievable. So he says, Greg, go in your room. Don't come out until the next day. Just go to bed. I'm like, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. So I go in my room, and I go to bed. And it's probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's, broad daylight. And in my room, I have a table like this one you see behind me. Okay. So I'm on my bed, and I look over at the table, and I'm like, what the? Well, first of all, there are no sea urchins in my bedroom. I was like, thank God, I'm good. But instead, there were 2 robots. I was like, what the? So they were like, I don't know, 4 inches tall, a male and a female. And they were making love. I'm like, what? Straight out. Vivid as if I'm watching television. And so, okay. So people don't like to be watched when they're making love. That's a very intimate moment. And because I remember when I was like in high school, I saw 2 dogs doing it. And I was like, what the heck? And I was watching. And then the male dog looked over and he saw me. And he just looked at me. And he went, "Arr!" my bad. Oh, you don't want to be watched? So I had a similar experience with this male robot. He looked over and he saw me watching, and he just gave me these laser beam dart. He's like getting all mad at me. I'm like, oh, okay. I'll be making love in my room if you don't want me to watch. So I turned my head. Curiosity got the best of me. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. I turn around, I look. Man, they're going to town. They are going to town. So let me see how this is going to look on camera. He looks at me. He looks at me, and he takes his arm, and he goes, and he squirts this like jism type substance through the air right at me. It hits me, and I turn my head, and I'm like, it's like sticky. I'm like, that was gross, man. That was so gross. So, and so I stopped watching, right? And then curiosity got the best of me. So I turned around again, and he turned his head. He saw me. He squirted me again. This probably happened like 3 or 4 times. I just remember it was all over my pillow, and I'm like, what the? So I flipped my pillow over, and hold on. Yeah,
you're talking?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What's up?
Oh, so I'm in there?
Yeah, you're in there.
Sorry.
I'm almost done, Mama.
Okay.
Where was I? Oh, so I flipped my pillow over and I buried my head, and I did not. I just stayed like that until I fell asleep, and I woke up the next day, and I went to work, and the work I did was just some kind of marketing company. We would like silk screen images onto styrofoam coolers, or we would take cozies like this. I went downstairs and grabbed one, and we would silk screen a company's logo on it, and then we would glue them together, and then we would just deliver them to all these different places around San Diego. And so I remember I was at work, and we had like the seam right here. We had to glue the seam by hand, stick it together, and I was having a hard time because my eyes were like glued shut practically. I was pulling pus out of my eyes, and I was squinting, and my coworker, he's just laughing at me, and he's like, bro, man, what are you doing? I go, no, I got it. So I did like 3, and they were bad. And he goes, bro, you got to go home. You can't see. Just go show the boss you have pus in your eyes and you can't see. I'll show him proof that you can't see, and you come back to work tomorrow. I said, okay, that's a good idea. So I went home, and my roommate's like, did you hear what happened? I'm like, what happened? He goes, a bunch of people are in the hospital blind. I go, what? Yeah, a lot of the people that took that peyote, they drank too much. Remember, I asked for more, and the guy said no. But some people probably had 4 ounces. And I heard there were people that were blind for 3 days. Like, there's a ZZ Top song, how can anybody be so unkind as to arrest a man for driving while blind? That's that moonshine. You do too much moonshine, it'll drink you blind. You know, I don't know how, till the next day or whatever. I've never drank too much moonshine, but I had a little too much peyote one time. So I'm kind of curious how the Indians actually do it. I know it's a spiritual experience for them. Like, it's part of their peyote. They have a peyote church. So yeah, man. So the next day I went to work, and I saw the 3 cozies that I had glued. Oh my gosh. It was just glue everywhere. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, good thing I went home. I felt bad for ruining some of my boss's product that he was trying to sell. So yeah, man, peyote, I mean, it makes for a good story. I'm not trying to glorify drug use, but it's not for me, bro. Give me that good, clean living. I'm good with that. All right, so thanks for watching. I gotta find out what the wife's chasing me down for. Peace out. Love you guys.